For our first elimination match of the day. My name is Rich Campbell. I'm going to be your host, and joining me on the desk, we have Healing Stat and Venruki to cast all of the action, and our new addition feels right at home. We got Sidu for all of the analysis. Now, with this matchup, we've already seen both of these teams today. How do you think this one may actually play out, Chuck?
Well, I definitely think I've been most impressed so far by Pen and Paper. They are the #1 seed coming out of China. I think they look fantastic in their series. On the other hand, Unitas not looking bad, but getting swept 3-0 is probably not too good for their morale right now. So I definitely think Pen and Paper's in a situation where they're ready to win this one.
How is it actually just watching the games from here? Is it a lot different for you?
It actually feels a lot more exciting. Like this is fantastic. Every game I kind of feel like I'm on the edge of my seat. You know, I'm a lot more involved because I need to, you know, get down the details and stuff. But this is fantastic up here.
Yeah, we love having you as well. Now, Venruki, you've been up here for a little while. It's been a while since you've hung up your hat. I want to hear your opinion of this matchup as well.
Well, I think it's going to come down to if Unitas can stay focused. Like, I think they have good compositions. I think they're good players. They're very well practiced. But, you know, after getting swept so hard in their first game, it can be difficult. They have to come here very, very focused in this next matchup. I think Pen and Paper is going to be a very difficult opponent for them. They have good compositions. We saw them run the Elemental Shaman Warrior Resto Druid, which has worked out very well in this tournament. We'll just have to see.
Yeah, and Adrian, to round everything out, want to hear your opinion jumping into this next match. Do you have a prediction?
I think actually on the flip side that Pen and Paper did look very, very strong in their first series. They played a lot of the Thundercleave, which is already the composition that did sweep Unitas. Of course, Method Triforce kind of on this next level, but still Pen and Paper looked really good against Splice. Unlucky, I think, a little towards the end of that, but Splice like really learned and grew. A lot of these teams have been saying that Splice is the best team here, so I wouldn't have been surprised to see just a 3-0 from Splice. Pen and Paper were able to take it, and I think they're going to take this series.
All right, and definitely excited to jump into this one as well. And as with every series, you can vote in Twitch chat. We want to know who you think will be able to take this one as well in our first elimination series of the day. It's got to be heartbreaking, though, if you made it all the way here, and this is opening week. We're kicking off things with a bang, but if you lose here, you don't actually get to play on that main stage. I feel like that's such a heartbreaking thing. I mean, it's definitely not as bad as getting knocked out earlier in the tournament. Obviously, like you don't want to go home in like a regional qualifier, but like if you actually like getting knocked out here like on the main stage, like you're just so close, Venruki.
What's really sad too is, I mean, Pen and Paper and Unitas, they lost the two teams that could potentially win the entire tournament very early on. So they're very strong teams. Just an unfortunate spot to be in.
Let's see what they can do against each other. They've already had to play against some of the fiercest competition, but casters, let's jump straight into this blind pick on Not Grand Arena.
Yeah, but it looks like Unitas is going to be locking in that Elemental Shaman with that Demonology Warlock and the rest of Druid, the same thing we've been seeing them run throughout this entire tournament. Pen and Paper taking sort of a page from Method. It seems like they are going to be running that Mistweaver Monk with the Way of the Crane, and Elemental Shaman and that Warrior. So Unitas already losing to this composition. Pen and Paper knows exactly how Method Triforce took them down, so that's a huge advantage going forward in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. It really is a big advantage. On the flip side, though, Swapsy did say that this was the hardest matchup in their group. They really thought that Unitas played the LSD so well. So now the onus is on Pen and Paper. Can they play this cleave to the extent that Method Triforce were able to? Because we saw some close games. Of course, we did see Shapist able to combine some of those tower kills with the cleave from the Fell Lord to try and get some of those kills.
Yeah, Rin into the Incapacitated Legsweep, already throwing the Iron Bark out onto Shapist, preventing some of this incoming damage. Doe getting a lot of pressure out very early on with that Stormkeeper, but Shapist HP is very stable. Rind in a good position right now. You know, he's playing Relentless, no Trinket. All CC is going to be a little bit less on him. We're going to be wait to see when PCAT can get that full Fear out. Maybe they can get some big burst now that Rind does not have that Iron Bark.
Yeah, and we can see this positioning is actually slightly different to how Method were choosing to play it. Doe sitting on the pillar with Saggy, so he's actually sitting right back with his healer, whereas Swapsy was preferring to sit in the open, get a little bit more, get some more damage out. PCAT as well, getting a fair bit of damage onto Shapist, but not as much pressure as we saw from Method in the early stages of this game. On the flip side, Doe taking a lot of damage.
Yeah, this is not looking as good for Pen and Paper as it did for Method. Full stun over onto Doe right now as it gets down to 5% HP. Life Cocoon coming in very clutch. Stack, though, with the Astral Shift. Pen and Paper playing this potentially a little bit sloppy right now. That is going to be the Way of the Crane coming out from Saji as well, trying to get some pressure for his team. Incapacitated leg sweep over on Rin, that classic CC chain. Shapist getting that Felguard up, not going to be interrupted. So it seems like you need Unitas Black having a much better time in this match. Rin getting bursted down a little bit, but should be fine with that Frenzied Regen and Barkskin.
Yeah, the playstyle coming out of Pen and Paper is completely different. Do is playing defensively. Sagi is also only using the Way of the Crane to react to situations where he's under pressure rather than using it aggressively, such as Botar. And when they got the pet there down from Shapus, if that was Method, they all go in. They stop the pet coming up, but immediately able to support back, summon it again. And Shapus and Hosido are actually starting to get some really good pressure in this game. We can see if they can get one more swap onto Do, no Astral Shift, no Trinket on Sagi, that could be the kill.
Yeah, Shapus taking a little bit of burst right now. Nice Hex from Do onto Hosida. But looks like Shape is able to just pour it away. He's going to be completely fine. Still has that gateway available as well. So he can kite that anytime PCAC can reconnect and get some pressure out, he can always fall back on that mobility to escape. Saji has the Way of the Crane in. But yeah, this team is not able to get out that same sort of consistent pressure that we saw from Method earlier. Unitas also had an opportunity. I mean, they got practice against this composition. It's looking a lot better for them. I think they're playing it out right. Pen and Paper potentially needs to play a little bit more aggressive. I think they have the damage potential and the crowd control to really force Shapus defensively, but they're just not able to get it out. PCAT getting lower and lower. Dive of the Sword traded out as well. Felguard taken down once again, so Shapus still having that same classic problem. He goes down, or his pet does. Rin not able to heal through that spread pressure.
Yeah, and Rin's able to get a fair bit of crowd control over onto Saji, and he's not playing the Relentless talent, which would obviously mitigate a lot of that. The Trinket it's good in some situations where you want to get aggressive, but we haven't really seen that from Pen and Paper so far. We'll have to see if they can utilize it for one of these really aggressive pushes, but looks like the game's just kind of stabilizing both these teams, sitting back for a bit. Shape is taking a little bit of damage. Rin actually getting caught up in the crowd control. He is playing Relentless, of course, so he doesn't have the Trinket for that. Able to get out, uses his artifact, should be able to stabilize Shapus.
Gets out Qs though, connecting onto PCAT. He's gotten to the stun. 2% HP. Can he hold on a little bit longer? Saji caught into the crowd control, trying everything he can to keep him alive, but he gets taken down. Unitas Black going to strike first blood, winning game number 1.
Yep, this is Brazil. Unitas Black, of course, the Brazilian duo of Shapus and Rin, joined by Hosido, who has been playing so good in this tournament, able to take game 1.
That is one of the exciting things, too, about actually being here, getting to see all the regions facing off. That's kind of been the story of the day. Every time we actually do jump into the match, it's 2 different regions fighting against each other based off of how seeding works. So that has been great, but we are going to see Unitas Black looking absolutely incredible in that first match. But before we actually talk about that, Sidhu, we've seen so much out of Thunder today. For anyone who maybe doesn't know how this composition works, why is it so strong here?
I'm sorry, which composition was that?
Thunder.
Thunder. Yeah, Thunder is just so strong defensively and offensively, but we weren't really seeing that too much from Pen and Paper. I'm actually a little disappointed. They were playing so well in the series earlier today, and I think they were trying to, you know, mimic Method Triforce, but mimicking Method Triforce is not something that's easy to do. If that were the case, there would be more BlizzCon champions. They're going back to back to back, so I think they're maybe playing a little bit out of their comfort zone with a Mistweaver or something. I would actually prefer to see them switch it up already.
And let's actually see that. Let's try to take a look at where exactly it did go wrong for Pen and Paper. And Sidhu, let us know what Unitas Black did well.
Well, the first thing that I noticed from Unitas as opposed to their earlier series was they're actually getting a lot of pressure out in this series. Versus Method Triforce, they were just taking a ton of damage, and Pen and Paper just did not have that pressure to compare with Method Triforce. So they're in a situation where if Unitas isn't having to play as defensively, they are going to lay on the pressure, and they were putting Method Triforce in positions where they were getting that damage out, but they were also receiving a lot of damage. So this just seemed like a very one-sided matchup, and this is very strange because it's a matchup we saw earlier today, and it felt like it was on the other side.
Yeah, the question is, Venruki, do you think that is going to be something that's repeatable as we jump into game number 2?
Well, I think so. I mean, in terms of offense and defense, Unitas seemed very solid in that game. Maybe Pen and Paper can opt to get a little bit more aggressive in the matchup, making sure they're slowing down some of those pet casts. So when the pet dies, you know, the Fel Lord, it's very difficult for, you know, Shapus to get that cast off like we saw in the first series today, but he seemed to have no problem in this matchup. The same sort of synergy wasn't there from Pen and Paper like we saw from Method earlier on today. They do have other compositions, maybe going back to, you know, a comfort pick, bringing the Resto Druid once again, definitely an option for them. I don't know how much Mistweaver they have prepared. Maybe they're trying to sort of copy Method, but definitely not working out.
That's kind of what Sidhu was saying as well. If they actually did do something like a Druid, what would that bring to the table?
I don't necessarily know if Resto Druid is the best pick in this matchup, but I definitely think that they want to stay with their comfort, and Rin's team has expressed how afraid they are of Windwalker DK. I think we've seen Pen and Paper on the Windwalker DK, and they were looking strong. I think that would be a much better pick from them, but when you're just trying to take a strategy and mimic someone else, Method Triforce won 3-0, but they were clean every step of the way. They probably had that matchup, you know, down and pat, you know?
Yeah,
so
that's probably something that they are just wargaming over and over and over again. I think one of the big things with Method Triforce, they said that they just take pretty much every matchup in wargaming like something like 1,000 times, Chuck.
Yeah, and one of the things to notice was when Swapsy got interviewed, he said that was their hardest matchup in the bracket. So there is definitely something going wrong here where Pen and Paper just didn't do their homework.
Yeah, and we are going to see right now Ashmane's Fall going to get locked in here by Pen and Paper, so they do have a chance now to try to get that compositional advantage going. But looking right now at Rin, we can see them locking in their comp. He's been a player for a long time. And for anyone who hasn't actually gotten to watch him recently, Adrian, what can they expect to see out of this player on Unitas Black?
Well, I think one of the really important things for Unitas Black, and Elliot alluded to this slightly before we hopped into the first game, is that they lost 0-3 to Method. They're going up against the same composition. It was very important they took that victory. They were ecstatic. Some of these players have never been to BlizzCon before. Of course, Rin has once, representing Europe. He played in 2014, I believe, but even then, he won a couple of games, but still, like, it wasn't a fantastic performance. This year is their year. LATAM has been respected by most of the regions. Novos saying that they're just as good as Europe and North America. Alex saying they were the best of any of the other regions. These guys really are a strong team in the eyes of the other teams that are playing here. And now that they've got their foot in the door, they need to secure it.
I think the thing with them, though, as well, is relatively limited compositions coming out, and I think that's what Pen and Paper's trying to act on here. When you say that you see them mimicking what already happened in the previous series, I think they're just trying to find that weakness.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something that's very, very common in tournament situations. As you see the tournament unfold, you definitely get ideas and strategies based off what you see. It makes a lot of sense. You know, don't fix what's not broken, but I would say this is something that you need to cut off immediately. They tried it, it didn't work. They need to move on and play something they're more comfortable with.
Now, I bring this up all the time. Usually you're not on the desk with me to actually speak to it. I always bring up something that you told to me. It was probably last year and then again this year. You always talk about the idea when you're up on the stage with your team, you really want to have all of the decisions already made. When you see a certain composition, you want to know exactly what talent you're playing. You want to know what composition you're playing. How much does that actually get impacted when you're up on the stage and you've already seen different things go down in war games? You've seen another team make different decisions and you've seen those results.
Well, there's so many decisions you can make in WoW in terms of comps, in terms of map, in terms of spec. This is something that you need to have ironed out before the series is actually going to start. So if Pen and Paper was paying attention, they should have they made a good first pick. It didn't work out, but they should definitely have backup options. If you don't have backup options, you're not going to get anywhere, because it basically means if you lose once, if you don't fix yourself perfectly, you're done for. And we've seen the mistake between, you know, people being confident and people being stubborn by not making that comp switch, going for something that's better for them. So you definitely want to map it out. And I actually have been taking notes from Method Triforce as well. Seeing how they prepared for me last year is something that I wanted to do this year, and having everything already written down when you only have a 2-minute window is very, very important.
Do you ever think that maybe some teams put too much weight on compositions, though? I feel like we see teams somewhat overcomping and almost playing themselves in certain scenarios.
Yeah, there's definitely an opportunity for you to spread yourselves too thin, and sometimes it's better for comfort instead of counter, making sure that you know what you're doing on the main stage. There's a chance if you're not super comfortable with what you're doing, you are going to crumble. I think Panda Global had a perfect example today. They were comfortable in those classes. They knew they weren't able to do it on their mains, and they got it done. So this is just something that Pen and Paper needs to, they need to swallow their pride. They need to say, you know what, Method Triforce did it, we can't.
Yeah, and something to sort of note too for Unitas. I mean, they are experts in this composition. Like you said, sometimes it's better to be, you know, a specialist in that one comp. And they had an opportunity earlier today to sort of figure out maybe what went wrong. You know, they lost that first series, first method, 3-0 or 0-3. And now they could go back to the drawing board, maybe change up their strategy, their spec, and now Pen and Paper coming in, maybe not as well practiced as Method, makes it very difficult now that Unitas is prepared.
Yeah, you don't want to be picking up something too on the fly, and we're going to have to see what works better here. Pen and Paper trying to play the composition that they believe is the best, or Unitas Black playing exactly what they feel comfortable in.
Yeah, it's basically comfort versus matchup here, and we can see with the power of that synergy, of the practice that you put in, you're able to overcome even some of the more challenging matchups. So that's very good on the side of Unitas Black, of course, because they don't have very many compositions. So this LSD is riding them through. They played in every single game so far to see if it can win in the game in Game 2 on Ash Remains.
Yeah, Unitas has practiced so much this year. They really are experts of this composition. PCAT running in, immediately stopping that gateway with the Stormbolt. Heroically, nicely done by him. Shape is not going to have that gateway now. Zito getting hexed up as well. This is a good start for Pen and Paper. They want to get very, very aggressive. This is what I like to see. Shape is getting lower and lower, incapacitate into leg sweep over onto Rind, but they aren't able to knock off the Vim. That's one thing that Method was doing very, very important. They were knocking off the Vim and Vigor from Rind, reducing some of his incoming healing. Unitas striking back right now with a nice little swap over onto Do.
Yeah, and just look at the way they're using their cooldown. Sagi, he's using the Way of the Crane kind of like reactively as opposed to proactively. He's not pushing in on Rind, he's just using it when Do is dropping low, and that means that Unitas back aren't under so much pressure and they're able to get offensive, which is what we've been seeing be the theme throughout these games. On the flip side, Thundercleave still does a lot of damage to Shape as he needs to be very careful. When he gets caught out in the open, it can be devastating.
Yeah, but Do in a lot of trouble. He's already trinketed, no Astral Shift for another minute. Saji caught into the full bash right now. If he can get a Cyclone out, Rind manages to get that Cyclone, so Do having to kite away right now as he is in trouble. Luckily, he can line of sight, toss some heals on himself. Doesn't look like Shapus or Josito able to get out any damage right now as they turn their attention over onto Pcat. Saji having to play catch-up right now, but luckily he has that Way of the Crane leg sweep over onto Rind. He's going to be able to tee off on that Resto Druid to heal up his team in this moment, and he stabilizes his team for now.
Yeah, I really like how Rind and Shapus are playing this matchup, though. It reminds me a lot of Looney and Warwick. They're just able to hide behind the pillars. They know when they need to use their portals. Their positioning is on point, and they are playing this game so defensively. Even against Method, they were really struggling to get the kills, and it just gives them time. Josito, he's in that aggressive positioning. He's getting the hexes on Do. He's really shutting down Pen and Paper, and Unitas just look like a brick wall at this point.
Yep, Stormbolt over onto Rind. Pen and Paper trying to get something going, but Pcat in a lot of trouble. That is going to be the Life Cocoon coming in from Saji that should keep Pcat alive for now as they try to get something going, but he's just having such a difficult time connecting to his target. Nice Vortex there from Rind. Heroic Leap has to be used so we can reconnect over onto Shapus. Shapus using that Axe Toss, and that is the trinket from Pcat, and that's how we saw Pcat die in the last game. He was caught in those stuns, so Shapus as well as Josito can organize their damage and coordinate when they do get those full stuns on Pcat. That's definitely a huge win condition for them.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's definitely something that's come out from the fact they've already played against Method. They've started to figure out this matchup a little bit more. We've seen Shapus and Josito focusing slightly more of that damage over onto the warrior Pcat, which has been very good for them so far because it just makes it slightly harder for Saji. He has to push in to get those heals, and with the Way of the Crane that might be logical, but of course that cooldown does run out at some point, and it's just quite a hard matchup for them if they can't get aggressive.
Yeah, Rind actually displacing in with the full bash onto Saji, looking for that Cyclone as well. It gets shut down there by Do. Nicely done, making sure Rind can't get that crowd control up, keeping him honest there. Pcat taking a lot of bursts right now. Josito having to kite away as well. Pcat caught into the full fear. Gonna Zerker Rage that to get out. This is nice pressure coming in from Pen and Paper, but it's on a Josito. This is something we haven't seen in the previous matchup. Before it was all the pressure onto Shapus, but Shapus is doing such a good job kiting in this matchup. Very good positioning, making it very difficult for Pcat and Do to actually get any pressure out.
Yeah, this is desperation for Pen and Paper. Swapping over to the Elemental, they don't know what to do. They can't get any damage or pressure going on to Unitas. I mean, hitting the Elemental is not going to be a good thing. Warriors are very immobile. He doesn't have the Death Knight with the chains to help him connect to his target. They are going back over onto Shapus now, but he just ports away. I mean, they're just wasting time. They're going to swap it over to Rind. I like this. I think this is much better than trying to hit the Elemental, but again, he has the Barkskin, he has the Gateway. He should just be able to get away.
Yeah, the Vortex Gateway going to be enough to keep Rind alive. Do trying to continue that pressure as well. Saji, they're all sort of dogpiling over onto Rind right now. Stormbolt over onto Shapus. Axe Toss comes out though, and a lot of burst over onto Pcat. The Earthshock stun gonna follow that up as it gets bursted down lower and lower. Saji caught into the stun. He has to trinket out of that. Die by the Sword forced out as well. Valkyrie is going to connect, but it's not going to do too much. Die by the Sword is going to be enough to deflect some of that incoming damage, but Pcat in a lot of trouble. He needs to make sure he's not getting over aggressive on Shapus.
Yeah, absolutely, and the PvP trinket was used there by Saji. Pcat also using his Die by the Sword. They have nothing left for this next swap from Unitas. If they can connect with one more Thalkiels, they will win this counter matchup again and go 2-0 up in the series.
Yeah, Do, just you can see him on the pillar right now trying to avoid as much damage as possible, but I really feel like he needs to be getting more aggressive if his team wants to secure a kill in this game. Cyclone over onto Saji, stun onto Pcat. Can Shapus get out the damage that he needs? Doesn't look like it. Not able to find that. Way the Crane is up for Saji right now, is able to easily top off his team, but now that it's down, Life Cocoon still not available for another 12 seconds. It's going to be very difficult for him to heal up his team. Zito going to be spamming out those purges on all those enveloping mists coming in from that Mistweaver. Zito getting bursted down quite low right now, though, having to use that Astral Shift to keep himself alive. Stormkeeper has been connected, so G still has that Life Cocoon. you know, he has the Way of the Crane coming up very shortly. That should be enough to keep PCAT alive. Stormbolt onto Rind as they try to counter pressure. Zito in a good position though right now. Everyone from Unitas is completely fine.
Yeah, that was almost all the pieces to the puzzle. I think Rin's Cyclone expired just a little bit too early, so they were able to get the Way of the Crane and survive. But that's also another thing about Elemental, right? Like, we talk about the consistent damage of the Thalkiels. Elemental's very proc-based, so if you're not getting the damage, if you don't already have the Stormkeepers loaded, then you might not have enough to actually damage to kill on a CC setup. We can see now they're trying to put a bit more pressure over onto Hasido. He's already used the Astral Shift, gets caught up in the Stormbolt, but a good Thunderstrike once again knocking PCAT away from the target. It's so hard to connect to an Elemental.
I think the big story of this game is just leaving Shapus alone too long. He's able to get out too much pressure. The Axoses are on point as well as those fears. And now PCAT in a world of trouble right now, trying to connect some pressure on Rin. Thalkiels connects onto PCAT. Saji has no healing left. Uses that revival. That's the last little tool he has in his arsenal to keep PCAT alive. He needs to wait for that Way of the Crane. Shapus getting lower and lower though. Still so safe. Anytime he needs to, he can just port away behind the pillar. Rin's easily able to top him off. You can see his positioning. He's right on top of that port. Saji pushing in though with the incapacitate over onto Rin. Pen and Paper able to stabilize. Dampening is now kicked in. We are at 7% dampening. But I really feel like Pen and Paper, they need to get aggressive. They need to be pushing onto Shapus if they want to have any hope of closing out this game.
And this is another thing, right? Dampening should theoretically, it should support the Thundercleave. They've got the MS, but it just doesn't look like that. The CS onto Saji, he was lower on mana. PCAT just falls. And once again, Unitas, how are they doing it? They're winning this counter matchup against the China #1, who everyone was thought they were playing so well.
And now Latin America is just one game away from making it into that top 10. And they are doing it with a composition that they have rode out throughout the entire season. They are doing it on their comfort pick. Nothing too flashy, just playing the game the way that they play it.
Yeah, absolutely. Unitas is doing a fantastic job, and I actually said it earlier, even though they got swept 3-0 by Method Triforce, they were doing a fantastic job, and right now Pen and Paper is just not executing. I saw it time and time again. We're probably going to get a couple replays of it, but they are just not generating the same pressure, and there's a ripple effect with that. Rin has more free globals. He gets to be more offensive. They get to position better. There's all these things that are just going wrong for Pen and Paper, and this is kind of why I said they should cut it off immediately, but it's definitely got to be a pride thing at this spot.
Yeah, that kind of becomes a factor as you move on in. You've already played it twice. It's almost like, do we give up on it now? We have to do it in the reverse sweep anyway. But when you're making those little mistakes in a composition, you basically aren't even counter-comping. You don't get that percentage.
And I think this is something that Chuck said. Just swallow your pride. This is a competition. Maybe you're not as good as Method Triforce. Not everyone here is the same level of play.
Not as good as Method Triforce at Thunder even.
Exactly.
You know, that's the only conversation that they have right now. To even make it a broader conversation, it's time to lock in a different composition. I totally agree with that. I think we need to see.
Look at how happy he is. I love it.
And one of those Warlocks as well that have seen for quite some time, and now getting to see him do it up on the stage is really incredible.
And I'm just so happy for these guys, right? I mean, Shapus, we were talking about maybe he's had some nerves in previous years. He's never made it to a BlizzCon, of course. LATAM, the first time that they get this direct route to BlizzCon, and some people are just cutting them off, right? They're the bottom seed, everyone just thinking they're going to get eliminated immediately. These guys have really put in the practice this year, and now it's paying off. It's such a great story.
Look at Shapus on the stage right now. I don't think nerves are even part of that discussion here. But then, Ricky, I have a tough question for you. Pen and Paper, let's say they do decide to switch compositions here. I think everyone on the desk agrees that it's probably something that they should be doing in this scenario. What do you think they would actually switch to?
Maybe Dosha go back to Enhancement Shaman. We saw Enhancement Shaman work out very well for Method in the first game. Maybe they could bring it to a smaller map, make it much more difficult for Shapus to actually kite, use that portal, use that gateway, get on Enhancement, get super aggressive. I think that's going to be key for them winning the next game. Yeah,
now if you're just jumping in the middle of this comfort versus comp discussion that we have been having, we want to show you exactly what has gone down. So we're going to take a peek at a few of the key moments that went down in that last game. Sidu, what did you see that really changed the impact of the game?
So this is something that Method Triforce did immediately, and PCAT definitely followed Blitzo on this one. He wanted to run in, make sure he stopped that gateway. The only difference is the initial pressure is just so underwhelming compared to what the Method Triforce does. They don't get nearly the same cooldowns. In this opener, Method Triforce forces Barkskin, they force Ironbark, they force Unending Resolve, and on the other hand, Pen and Paper, I think, only gets Ironbark out from Rin here. He doesn't have to skin. Saji is not pressuring Rin the way Botar was, knocking off that Vim and Bigger, so excellent job by Botar in the previous series, and they are just not getting it done, so that just leaves Unitas kind of unchecked where they could just do what they want. Rin's playing aggressive. He's getting those cyclones. We didn't see that in the previous series. He was too under pressure. So they're getting the pressure out here on PCAT, as you can see. And ultimately, as you keep going through these cooldowns, you're forcing trinkets, you're forcing the parry. You're eventually going to grind this team down. You're going to win. That is the strategy coming out from Unitas. They want to dampen these teams. They want to live long enough to win. And ultimately, that's exactly what happened. Unitas just has these guys in the palm of their hands. And like I said, they are not playing bad. This is a phenomenal team, and they are showing it right here.
I think the other thing that you mentioned that's absolutely crucial is just how these little mistakes build on each other, and all of a sudden you just have a landslide, and all those mistakes are going to come crumbling down on you. I'm in a position right now where I think out of all the series that we have seen today, this is the most excited I am to see the draft. This is an elimination match. If you're just jumping in, if Unitas wins this game, pen and paper is done. We are going to see LATAM make it to that top 10, and we are going to see this team from that APAC region be out of the running here. As you can see, Unitas Black, it's not broken. They're definitely not going to try to fix it, but on Ruins of Lordaeron, we are going to have to see. Yep. Okay, there it is. We're going to see that turbo coming out here. Adrian, what do you think of this turbo pick?
Well, it's just like Elliot said. I think this is a way of forcing themselves to play more offensively. They're getting too tempted to just sit back with the elemental. Of course, the melee damage coming out of the enhancement is going to force them to play aggressive. I also love the fact that they've chosen Ruins for this.
Yeah, I get to steal Sid's joke. I'm really excited for that one as well when we actually do jump into this series. But what's the reason that you're excited to jump into on Ruins of Lordaeron, Adrian?
I just think it's so good for melee cleaves. It's a very small map. There's not too much space for Shapers to even set up his gate. That's assuming he gets it in the first place, which he should. But we've seen a couple of times against Method that he wasn't quite able to, just because the melees can charge in. It's really difficult as the Warlock to stabilize in those situations, and also Rind. If Saji can copy and emulate what Botar did, get onto him, get the crowd control, get the damage to remove that Vim and Vigor, should be easier on this map.
Yeah, so this is not a matchup that we see all the time, so we're going to refer to our expert here. How do you expect this one to actually play out, Sidu?
Well, I've seen this a little earlier today. Method Triforce ran this exact comp, and they did well with it. They won, but believe it or not, I actually think it looked a little more difficult than the Thunder, so they ended up sticking with that Thunder. I think it was a little smoother for them. I think this is something on this map which is a really good pick, but in general, I don't know if this is the right way they should be moving. On Ruins of Lordaeron, I believe in this. I think it's great, but you know, Rin's team expressed how afraid they are of Windwalker DK. They think they cannot beat Windwalker DK. If this team was doing their homework, I think that's the comp that you lock in after this if you win.
Yeah, but it comes back to comfort yet again. We've already started to say maybe this enhancement shaman is where they will feel at home, but we're going to have to see it on Ruins of Lordaeron. And the main question is, Ruins of Lordaeron going to be the final resting place of pen and paper?
Of course, you had to do that, man. You just had to do that. I expect this to be a very fast-paced game. I think Pen and Paper is sick of playing defensive. They want to get super aggressive, and that's the reason why they picked this enhancement shaman. Shapus is going to be under a lot of pressure. If you pressure Shapus, force him to summon his pet over and over, you interrupt those pets, that's where all your pressure generates from. You can actually look at the poll at the bottom of the screen. 64% of people thought Pen and Paper was going to win this matchup. Unitas proving them wrong.
Yeah, and I think that's also bearing in mind that we've had 2 wins for Unitas. Imagine what that poll looked like before. Everything has stacked against this team from Latin America, both the composition, the fans. No one expects them to win these games, and yet they do it. The LSD composition from these guys has just been so well executed, both against Method and Pen and Paper, and if they win this game, they will eliminate the first team from China.
Joe actually used his Bloodlust there immediately, and Shapus kited all of it. I don't think he got 1 point of damage off there with that Bloodlust, so that's very unfortunate for Pen and Paper. Unitas doing a great job deflecting this initial assault. Doe now caught into the axe toss. He is going to trinket out of that. Everyone right now from Pen and Paper rotting down to the Stormkeeper of Josito. So good job by him. Fell Commander has been dropped by Shapus. A lot of pressure over onto Doe right now. Can't get that Astral Shift off. He's just going to go down. No, he's not. Barely surviving there. Astral Shift comes out at 2% HP. That's a full hex over onto Saji as well. Doe needs to be able to dispel that, but it's just not in line of sight. Life Cocoon still available. Way of the Crane available for Saji. That was such a close call.
Yeah, Saji actually did everything we wanted him to do. He pushed in, he immediately used the Way of the Crane, but they crowd controlled it. They've learned from the series against Method. Josito getting the Hex, getting the Fears. It was not enough damage to force them over the line. Now, Shapus in a bit of trouble. This is where Ruins of Lordaeron does suffer for the Warlock. He can't really kite away. Rind able to get out of crowd control. He used the Bark Skin, but he's still out of Vim and Vigor range. He needs to top himself off so that he can heal up Shapus, but he's dropping so low. Pummel almost in execute range, but he will recover with Unending Resolve.
Yeah, Unending Resolve going to be preventing getting a lot of that incoming damage. That was away the crane from Sajid. Now that that has faded, Unitas has an opportunity to strike back. Sajid not going to be able to heal quite as easily. Doe taking a little bit of pressure, but it seems like he's just line of sighting. Rind actually pushing in, looking for a full Cyclone. Fakes out the wind shear there. Nicely done. Valkule's consumption over onto Doe. Life Cocoon was traded out by Sajid to keep him alive. Nice burst coming in from Unitas.
Yeah, really nicely executed. Once again, Rind, when he gets those free globals, he is one of the best resto druids in the world. He gets the Cyclone. Now, caught up into the crowd control. Saji does have that way of the crane. Is he going to use it for the Vim and Vigor? It doesn't look like he's just porting away. That could have been an opportunity to get a lot of pressure there, but once again, Shaper's able to be topped off, and now it's their turn to get offensive. If they can crowd control Saji here, he doesn't have the PvP trinket, they can maybe get a kill over onto Doe.
Honestly, Shapus is playing so phenomenal in this game with his kiting, his ports, his gateway. He needs to be able to survive a little bit longer, though. Fell Lord has been dropped. This is going to be very scary for Doe and PCAT. They can't just be tanking out this Fell Lord damage. Doe getting lower and lower. Astral Shift traded out once again. Full bash over onto Saji. Doe trying to escape, trying to get away. Shears up Rin. Rin now caught into the full fear, but no pressure going to be used. That was completely defensive fear from PCAT. He needed it, though, to keep his teammate alive.
Yeah, and we did get the Astral Shift once again, so there's going to be no defensive cooldowns basically for a good 40 seconds on the side of Pen and Paper. If they can get the crowd control over onto Saji, we'll have to see. Of course, Fell Lord is also quite a long cooldown, so they won't have that for the next onslaught. Preemptive Ironbark from Rind on the incap might be enough to save Shapers. He doesn't have any defensive of his own, of course. Ports away, should have that gateway available soon, but another beautiful play from Rind.
Yeah, Shapus just tanking out some of this damage. I don't believe he has his gateway available just yet. He has no distance. Taking a whole bunch of bursts with a sheer over onto Rind. Unbelievable damage coming in from Pen and Paper to strike back, coming back in this series.
And that's why it's hard for the Warlock in these matchups. You can get bursted down, especially with the Warrior. You've got the Sharpened Blade, you've got the Mortal Strike. Very difficult, and yeah, Pen and Paper on point in that game.
Not going to be giving this one up that easy. They are fighting for their region just as Unitas is. Unitas still just one game away from victory, but hey, this is exactly what you were kind of saying, Sidu. They needed to get off of that Thunder.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I kind of predicted that in the first game. It's unfortunate that it took them two, but, you know, seeing the results that they had earlier with that Thundercleave, they thought they could mimic it. Unfortunately, they weren't able to. Fortunately for them, they were able to pick the right comp on the right map. They were able to take it down, but I really don't believe that this is going to be the right pick for them in the future, especially if something happens with like Blade's Edge. You know, the Warlock's going to be constantly jumping off and going back up, so I think they're going to have to go back to the drawing boards once again.
Yeah, that is a big thing here when they aren't going to be able to choose that map this time around. Now Unitas has that advantage. They are going to be able to select the map. They're going to see what comp gets locked in by Pen and Paper, and then with all of that information, will pick their composition. So this is one of those scenarios where they almost have to hedge their bet just a little bit, Venriki. So when they get to that drawing board, what do you think they actually do attempt to lock in?
Well, I think Unitas going for a bigger map, obviously something like Tolvaron, going to be very good for them. And then as Pen and Paper, what do you do? I mean, you just won as that Turbo Cleave. Do you get off the composition you just won? I know CD thinks that they should, but what other answers do they have? Do they go back to the Elemental Shaman?
They can't go back to Thunder.
Thunder would. It didn't look good for them. I'll say that they were losing pretty convincingly. As Turbo, it seemed like they had a much better chance, but that's because of probably Ruins of Lordaeron on that small map. Shapus did a phenomenal job, but eventually you just run out of places to go.
There's just so much on the line here as well, because we actually do see both of the Asian teams are going to be on the chopping block today. So if they end up getting knocked out, and then imagine PvP gets knocked out, all of a sudden we have the main stage of BlizzCon with no Asian teams represented. So that's a lot on the line for these teams, Adrian.
Especially since we hype them up so much, right? Like a lot of these guys were saying this is China's best year, and I feel like this happens every year. Like there's so much unknown, people saying maybe they can do it this year, but then they end up just falling short. We saw a very close series against Splice. I mean, they were so close to even taking that 3-0, but they got reverse swept. That has been a theme for the day. We've seen a couple of them, and maybe they can pull it off here against Unitas.
Yeah, and let's take a look at some of those moments right now and actually see what this comp did do for them, how they were able to take this one.
So the start of this game is a little disheartening, but I actually think something good happens out of this. They run in, they try and force the CDs, but Shape is doing a fantastic job just kiting immediately. The Bloodlust, the Doomwinds were used. Shape is redropping his port, making sure he's in a situation where he can get back to Rin really easily. But something awkward happened here. He did not use Ironbark for that Lust, so that actually kind of threw off the pace of the game, where normally you want to line those up, but unfortunately had to use it later. And I think that was ultimately kind of the demise where they actually ended up getting that kill. But fantastic job from Rin right here, getting the CC out. Look how low down DAO is. This is not a one-sided matchup. This was not a clean win for Pen and Paper. This is one of the reasons why I think they need to get off this comp. This was the map that they wanted, and they were still so close to losing it. And I still think Unitas is in control of this series, even if they were to run this matchup again on a map that they're favored on. And right here, what we're seeing is Rin getting CC'd. Shape is doing a fantastic job kiting, and they are going to connect. And Josita was, doing a fantastic job peeling. And once again, Josita is actually, oh, excuse me. Actually, this is actually where they go down. I was a little lost. The Hex comes in a little bit late, but, Unitas, once again, they were basically this close to winning that game.
Well, the big thing with Pen and Paper here, and this, I imagine, is not an easy thing to do. You've been in the position, I haven't, but winning a game and then saying, okay, we need to change the comp.
Yeah, that's the difficult thing. And you can see, as predicted, Unitas picks Tolvaron Arena, very large map. Turbo is not going to have as easy a time on Tolvaron as it did on Ruins of Lordaeron, and that was not an easy game for them. I mean, there was a moment where Doe, he literally lived at 1% HP. I actually thought he died. Somehow managing to survive and pulling off that win, a true miracle, but yeah, I don't know. What compositions could they possibly change? It looks like they're just going to lock in the same thing.
They are going to lock in the same thing.
Well, I've said it a few times already. Obviously, Unitas very afraid of that Windwalker decay, but I think swapping comps after a win is a sign of a very disciplined team. It takes a lot to say, you know what, we won this game, but there's got to be something different, and I just don't think Pen and Paper has the LAN experience to back that up, but we saw it earlier with Method Triforce. They won that game 1, and on a big map, they swapped the composition.
This was something I was afraid of, actually. I think Unitas, when they lose, I was really scared they'd overthink it, and I think they have here. I think the LSD on the big map would have just been fine, but this is something where you've lost a game. That you talk about like the LAN experience. I mean, we've all been to BlizzCons. When you're in that situation of facing elimination, it can really mess with your mind. Maybe you go in with a strategy that locks Shaman Druid, but Aiden coming out on the Warrior, in theory, yes, perfectly fine matchup, but in terms of comfort, this is Aiden's first time at BlizzCon.
Well, here's the question, right? And this echoes exactly what Sidhu just said. Is this the sign of a disciplined team in Unitas Black, or is this the sign of a team that is overthinking things?
Well, there could definitely be a lot of overthinking. I'm not sure if this is one of them. My biggest fear right here is after talking with Unitas and meeting with them, Shapus and Rin are the heart of this team. I don't know if this team is going to have a leader with Aiden and Josita, so we're going to have to see if they can have the communication and have the, have the skill set to make sure this happens. But perfectly fine comp. They have some room, some flexibility, and I think if they do go down here, they could back it up with Blade's Edge, so they have a little bit of room for error. But we'll have to see if this is discipline or a little overthinking.
So that brings up a really interesting point as well. I believe it was when we were talking to Rockets. They were talking about the fact that Jamie is one of the vocal leaders, but he's not the only vocal leader. So I believe it's Cervantes is the other vocal leader on that team. So sometimes when they are actually playing together, there's a lot of chatter. And sometimes it's actually bad having two of those vocal leaders. So when we look at this, maybe having Rin as the sole vocal leader may work out fine for them, but we're going to find out because we're jumping right into this game. A lot on the line here for both of these regions. We're going to have to see who comes out on top with these compositional switches that are coming in.
Yeah, Aiden going to be making his BlizzCon opening week debut. We'll have to see how he performs here. I think Unitas Black, I mean, this composition is very solid. I think Thunder's good against these melee cleaves, particularly Turbo. This Mistweaver is going to have a very difficult time healing through this single target and spread pressure coming in from Unitas.
Yeah, so in terms of matchup, I think Thunder is a fine choice here. Of course, it's on the biggest map in the pool, Blade's Edge Arena, so that range damage is going to help them. We've talked already about how good elementals are at kiting away. The concerns we have are losing Shapus, who's one of the most experienced members on this team. Are they going to have that offensive shot calling? It's really up to Aiden on the Warrior, the new addition to the team, to step up, synergize with Josita. Of course, both these guys did come from the same team, so they should have some inbuilt synergy.
Ooh, I love this positioning from Josita, just pulling them into the corner of the map, but that's the incapacitated leg sweep over onto Rin. Aiden getting bursted down, might have to use the time by the sword, gets it off at 1% HP, rallying cry as well. So a lot of initial pressure over onto Aiden. That's a full fear over onto Rin. He's already used the Iron Bark, so many defensive cooldowns forced out very early.
Imagine the nerves and stress on Aiden right now as well. This is his first time on the BlizzCon stage, and 30 seconds into the game, there's no defensive cooldowns left on Unitas. Huge concern for them and their fans. We'll have to see if they can get some aggressive pressure. They haven't really forced anything on Saji. He's not playing the way of the crane, so he's just able to sit behind a pillar, tunnel that soothing mist, and if they can't get the pressure to go through that, they're just going to lose this game.
Hezito doing a good job with his position, making sure Saji has to pull off off the pillar. That's a full bash onto Saji. Gets trinketed out, but Doe getting lower and lower. Onto the Stormbolt. No actual shift available. Unitas Black going to close it out. Aiden strikes back.
And we will see Latin America in Anaheim looking incredible here. And it seems to be the sign of a disciplined team, Sidu. They are going to be a threat when we descend upon Anaheim.
Absolutely. Unitas making a very, very strong decision, having a lot of faith in their warrior Aiden, even though he hasn't had too much experience. This is his debut at BlizzCon, so you know, having the faith in him, especially considering the amount of pressure he was under immediately using those defensive cooldowns. It's going to happen versus Turbo. They are going to get some CDs, but making it happen only a few seconds later.
You know, you have that fourth guy on your roster for a reason. You definitely do want to use him, and I think it's also nice if you do get to use him before you get him. This is a very different scenario, and actually everyone on this desk besides me has probably played on that BlizzCon stage. A little bit awkward, but when you're actually up on that stage, like there isn't a huge audience here. You're kind of playing for your peers. You have a little bit of that comfort, but when you get on that BlizzCon stage, all of a sudden everyone who has been watching you online, all of your friends, your family, and people who maybe haven't even watched WoW before, you're under that microscope. And how different is that, Adrian, when you actually do get there versus being here in opening week?
Well, personally, I just think it's exhilarating. I'm so happy for this LATAM team that they're going to get to experience this, because it is really a different feeling playing in a studio, playing in front of a live audience. I mean, there's a lot of guys that will be rooting for this team. They are the sole representatives of their region, the first team of their kind to make it out here all the way to Anaheim. So congratulations to them. I think one thing that I actually noted there was that Panda Global were watching this series, and they're also in the same group, and they've been saying about how they are fearing these Windwalker DKs. So when Unitas won that game, they kind of jumped up for a second there, I saw. So they already beat one Windwalker DK, another one's out the way. It's starting to look better and better for these NA teams as well.
Yeah, that was actually one of the funny things. They straight up said they didn't have an answer to Windwalker DK when we talked to them a little bit earlier, but I do want to celebrate what actually went down. Let's look at a few of those key moments that resulted in the win for the Latin American region.
So right off the bat, you see Pen and Paper coming out swinging, but obviously Unitas doing exactly what they needed to make sure they survived. The cooldowns were used perfectly. And right here, you're going to see Aiden dip down immediately. Rin gets leg swept. And Aiden actually maybe using the die-by sword. Dangerously low, maybe some strong communication from Rin saying you have Iron Bark, you're fine, and then decides he's not halfway through. As a healer, I know exactly how that is. Sometimes you undercompensate a little bit. It happens. They had a fantastic recovery. Rin topping off Aiden, no problem. And then Aiden getting right back in there, having faith in his healer, Rin, the veteran healer that he is, going aggressive. And Saji actually trinketing not too long ago. They get that full clone, Rin playing aggressive, playing that healer the way he needs to, getting the full Stormbolt, making sure that the enhance couldn't kite, and they were able to clean it up.
Yeah, now as a result of that matchup as well, no regions have been sent home yet, and we're actually going to get to hear from Rin. He's on the floor right now for an interview.
Thanks so much, Rich. I am indeed standing by with Rin, fresh off of his victory and getting his chance to play on that main BlizzCon stage. Now, your team in particular is a little bit of a strange one in the fact that most of your compositions are based around a Demonology Warlock, which isn't really in meta. Does that give you some sort of advantage because maybe teams haven't practiced against your comps as much?
I think like people have actually practiced a lot against Demolocks. The thing is, Demolocks are really weak against the heavy melee, for example, Warriors, DKs, but we're pretty much really good against the casters and like hunters and stuff. So I don't know, like I feel like everyone is prepared for everything in this BlizzCon, so.
Well, the enemy team, whether they were prepared or not, you guys definitely got the job done. And that's something that's really interesting about your team, is that this is the first time that we have a chance for Latin America to qualify for BlizzCon on their own. Does this feel special to you to be able to represent the Latin American WoW community, not only just being here, but also winning?
I don't know, like I'm really proud of being here and just like representing like not just my country, Brazil, but like Latin America itself. But I don't know about winning. It's really hard. Everyone here is so good. But, like, it's an honor, and I hope, like, I'm going to be, like, doing well enough to actually make them proud of me. I don't know.
Yeah, well, you definitely proved your worth today along with your team. But I do want to ask, earlier today you guys struggled a little bit against Thundercleave, but then this match just now, you guys did great. What did you learn in that first matchup that you applied to this one right here?
First is just not get our portal bugged on Ashman's Fall. That makes a huge difference because against, like, Bolter's team, Shape is portal bugged, and we just realized like it's a glitch on the exact arena. And second thing is that like I don't know, the Chinese, they seem to do a little bit less damage, so which makes it a lot easier for us. I'd say.
Fair enough. Well, you guys definitely kept your composure and played great. Now, one last question for you. You're no stranger to the BlizzCon stage. You've been here a few times before, but it seems like your chemistry with this team is a little bit different. Is this team special to you for some reason?
I've been playing with Shapers for the past 2 years, so like we've been doing well like together, and like Haas and Aiden, they're pretty nice guys. So like I would say they're really special, and we've been practicing a lot, and we do well with each other, which is great. Like we have synergy, and we don't stress with each other. So like I would say like this team is actually really good this year.
Awesome. Well, that practice and that camaraderie definitely shows here on stage. Looking forward to seeing you guys continue, but we have one last matchup to get to before we close out the day here in the Blizzard Arena.